Now, is life in New Zealand better than what it is in the UK? In today's video, I'm going to go into my honest review and my honest opinion about whether life in New Zealand is better than what it is in the UK, and advice from my own personal experience of living in both countries. And at the end of the video, you'll find out which country I would rather live in. So yeah, before we get into it, make sure you give the video a like and subscribe to the channel. And yeah, let's get into it. So I'm a 24-year-old from the UK. I've been living out of the UK for about 3 years, but I've been living in New Zealand for quite a while now. I'm actually going to be leaving New Zealand soon, so I thought it was a good time to make this video as I've lived here for a decent amount of time now. I can give a pretty honest review and a decent review. One disclaimer before we get into it, because I know you lot are going to go mad in the comments about this. I haven't travelled all of New Zealand, which I know I can't give a review on the whole country, which is not what I'm doing. I'm not giving a review on the whole country. I'm giving a review on my experience here. So for you lot saying, oh, you haven't even been to the South Island, I know I'm not reviewing the South Island. I'm reviewing my experience here, living here on the North Island. So how does it really compare to the UK? So let's start off with some of the positives, the things that I think are definitely better in New Zealand compared to the UK. First point, obviously, is the nature. The nature is probably the top of the list for anyone that wants to go to New Zealand. I don't think there's many people that want to come here that don't want to see the nature, because look, it's some of the best nature in the world, especially down on the South Island. Obviously I haven't been there, which is a bit of a shame, but even the North Island, the scenery is amazing. Getting out of the city and actually getting to see the nature, it is incredible. And whilst the UK countryside and stuff is nice, it doesn't compare to New Zealand, because there's no doubt that New Zealand does have some of the best nature anywhere in the world, and it's a big positive of living here. The next positive over the UK is that New Zealand is very peaceful and relaxed. And this is in some ways a benefit for me, because I do like more peaceful vibes. Whilst I am in my 20s and I do like quite a lot going on and lots of opportunity and lots of people to meet, the UK can get a bit busy and loud, and that is one of the benefits of New Zealand, and it's very peaceful, very quiet. Particularly, I can imagine really enjoying it when I'm a bit older maybe, because it is very peaceful, and I can imagine it being a very nice place to live. If you've kind of done everything that you want to do and you've made decent money, it is the perfect place to just settle down and live a very peaceful life. I've been honest and said, which I'll come on to, it's not the best place for crazy vibes and opportunity, but in terms of peacefulness and living a relaxed life and yeah, just peaceful vibes, there's not many better countries I think for just a quiet life than New Zealand. Combining that with the nature, and you can live a very, very relaxed, carefree life in New Zealand for sure. The next thing is, I feel like people in New Zealand are definitely more positive than people in the UK, and I feel like there's just an overall more positive culture in New Zealand. I say this about Australia as well compared to the UK, and whilst I do like the UK, and British people will always be my favourite and I'll always have the best connections with them, there's no doubt that we are very negative, and we do have a negative culture in the UK. There's a massive culture of complaining about the country. Living in New Zealand, I just feel like whilst people aren't overly positive and crazy, people are just so chilled out here, and there is just a positive vibe. I think it's not as much as Australia, because I think Australia is so positive, particularly because of the weather and stuff, but New Zealand, I do feel like the culture here is very relaxed and more positive than the UK, where particularly at work and stuff, there's just a lot more negativity, and people are, yeah, the culture is more negative. The next positive about New Zealand is that it's safer and cleaner than the UK. Now, for me, there's no doubt about this, but New Zealand is one of the most cleanest countries I've ever been to. Even in the biggest city in Auckland, it is incredibly clean for a major city, clean and safe as well. Comparing this to the UK, where UK towns are pretty dirty, you know what I mean? There's a lot of boarded up shops. Crime is definitely worse in the UK. I've said this on this channel before, and I think UK towns and cities are pretty depressing, to be honest, in 2025 compared to New Zealand, where everywhere is so clean, it's very well kept, and there's no doubt that New Zealand is so much safer than the UK. I feel a lot safer in New Zealand than I do walking around central London, 100%. And the last positive of New Zealand is the winters are so much warmer than what it is in the UK. Now, obviously, New Zealand winter can be a bit cold and dark, and it definitely rains a lot, but right now we are 1 month, in fact we are now a couple of weeks before winter starts in New Zealand, and it's still like 18, 19 degrees some days, which if you compare that to the UK 1 month before winter, which is November, it's definitely not 18 or 19 degrees, it's about 5 degrees. And overall, the winter here is a lot warmer than what it is in the UK. Yeah, it rains, and that can be pretty shit, but it's not cold like it is in the UK. Getting up for work in the UK when it's like -5 is awful. At least you don't have to deal with that so much in New Zealand. So there are some positives about New Zealand. There's no doubt there is a lot of positives about here above the UK for sure. But with any comparison, there's going to be some negatives, and there's no doubt, unfortunately, that New Zealand does have some negatives compared to the UK. The first negative about New Zealand compared to the UK is that it is quite boring and there's not a lot going on. Now, like I said, New Zealand is known for its nature and its amazing scenery. Unfortunately, if you take that away from New Zealand, there really isn't much going on at all. That's why I say it's a better place for older people who have maybe made some money and can just chill out compared to young people chasing opportunity, because yeah, there isn't a lot going on. There's not so many events. Even in the biggest city in Auckland, for a major city, there's not much to do, especially when the weather isn't great. New Zealand is great when the weather's nice. Auckland in the summer was nice. Auckland in the winter is not great, to be honest. And I don't think this is a surprise, because the UK is like, the population is so much bigger than New Zealand, so obviously there's going to be more going on in the UK, events. Obviously my friends and family are there as well, which is a positive for me. But yeah, there's a lot more events, a lot more going on, and that's no surprise, to be honest, when you consider the population of New Zealand and how far it is from everything as well. It's one of the negatives of living here, and it's without spending a lot of money to go and do activities, there isn't that much to do. The next negative of New Zealand is that it is isolated. Now, again, this isn't a surprise to anyone. It's one of the most isolated countries in the world, but it is a real thing, and it is a bit of a shame being here. Considering how isolated it is, it does feel as isolated as it looks, unfortunately, because it is so quiet and peaceful, which again is a positive in some ways, but that does add to the isolation of being here. And also, it's not like in Europe where you can just get a quick 1 or 2 hour flight to other places. New Zealand, the closest country is Australia, which is still like a 3-hour flight. If you want to go anywhere else other than Australia, you're looking at potentially going to Asia, which is like a 6-7 hour flight at least. So yeah, the isolation is a pretty big negative, to be honest, of living in New Zealand. And yeah, if you want to travel or have a holiday, yeah, there's like Fiji and stuff, which isn't too far, but there's not that many options. The next negative for me, and this is a personal point of view, and that is, it is not worth being so far from home for how good it is, if you know what I mean. I think one day we will return to the UK, but I'm going to compare it to Australia as well. With Australia, I feel like Australia is amazing. I've been open and honest and said that I generally have preferred Australia to New Zealand, and I feel like being away from the UK is a massive negative. Living in Australia is almost worth being away from the UK because it is that great for us. It is almost worth being away from home because it has to be an amazing place for it to be worth being so far from home. Australia nearly, I would say, is worth it. New Zealand, for me, as nice as it is, for me it's not worth being so far away from home. Do you know what I mean? And because it is so similar to the UK as well, for me it doesn't make sense living the other side of the world where the country is very similar. And the last negative, again, it's very similar to the first point, and that is the nightlife and event scene. I think Australia and New Zealand in general don't have the best nightlife compared to the rest of the world, but in general, I think that New Zealand nightlife is not great, even though I haven't been out much. Realistically, there's not many events, there's not that great nightlife, not compared to the UK at least. I think the UK is a great country for nightlife. To be honest, not like nightlife is a big thing for me anymore. I would not move somewhere purely for nightlife anymore at all. It doesn't really make too much of a difference. But for you guys who maybe do want to move somewhere with good nightlife and lots of events, to be honest, New Zealand isn't the best place for that, to be honest, but the UK maybe is. So yeah, that's just my honest opinion on New Zealand versus the UK, some personal opinions, and also just some straight facts about both countries for you guys who maybe are weighing up a move or debating to move to either country. There's no doubt that both countries have their positives, but it just depends what you're looking for. Overall, which country do I think is better? Now, this is difficult, to be honest. I think it's a close one. Now, generally, I would say New Zealand probably is a better country, but does that mean I will live here? No, it doesn't, because as I said, it's not worth being that far away from home, in my opinion. And whilst it is maybe a better country, I would rather live in the UK, because for me to live that far away from the UK, it needs to be pretty incredible. Like I say, Australia almost is that level where it could be worth it. For me, unfortunately, New Zealand isn't, which is not me saying I hate New Zealand at all, because it is great, but for me, I personally wouldn't want to live, you know, this far from the UK, but you guys might want to. So yeah, that's just my honest opinion. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and yeah, I'll see you very soon with another video.